For 25 years, I've had the honor of teaching leaders about improving accountability. And it's inevitable as I teach these leaders, they teach me things as well. That happened with a guy by the name of James. We were in a workshop, and James's previous career had been with child services, social services in his state. He was a protective investigator. Get this, he was the guy that had to go out, make the determination when children had to be put in foster care because of an unsafe situation. What a hard job. I can't even imagine the things he saw. Well, I can't imagine because he talked about them a little bit. And as I was talking about accountability, he said, "Hey, Scott, I think I get this." He said, in a lot of ways, accountability and doing it right is the absolute opposite of neglect. And I'm thinking about child neglect. And boy, you want to make a room real quiet. Bring up the two words child neglect in a room and it gets real quiet. So here I am at the front of the room. I'm going like, do I go here? And I decided to. My gut said, yeah, he was on to something. I just didn't get it quite yet. So I said, James, what do you mean? He said, well, think about neglect. If a caretaker, a guardian, or a parent were standing beside a child at a street corner and they were not paying attention and that child suddenly ran to the street and the parent just looked out and did nothing about it, even if a car wasn't coming, that would be a neglectful situation. And if there was a car coming and a police officer saw this, that parent could potentially be charged with child neglect. And I still wasn't quite sure where he was going with this. I said, okay, that makes sense regarding children, but how does this relate to employees? He said, well, Scott, there are times that we could be engaging in employee neglect. The employee may not be running out in the street, but they could be doing something that if we're watching it, and it's a counterproductive action, if we don't speak up, if we don't say something, we're engaging in employee neglect. We are doing something harmful to that employee. And then he said something really amazing. He said, you know what, Scott? Accountability, as you've been teaching it, is an act of compassion compared to that neglectful behavior. That changed everything for me because that was when I realized that the words compassionate and accountability go together. I believed it. I talked about it as an act of compassion. I just never said the words compassion or accountability. But you know what it is? You either are a neglectful leader or you're engaging in compassionate accountability. If you're not holding people accountable, if you're not calling them out in nice ways when they're doing the wrong things, you're a neglectful leader. But compassionate accountability, you're telling people the truth when they need to hear it. You're getting them on the path when they're doing the wrong things. And you're keeping them from harm by stopping them when they do things that are counterproductive. When you look at it in that light, if you're holding back as a leader, you're neglectful. But if you're speaking up as a leader and doing the next right thing, that's compassion and accountability. Now, how do you practically apply this beyond what I said? Well, let me give you a couple suggestions of how to proceed. So suggestion number one, treat accountability as the act of compassion it is. Think of it that way. Even if you're a little bit scared of speaking up, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, remind yourself, I'm doing the compassionate versus neglectful thing. Act as if. Pretend, if that's what it takes, that this is an absolute act of compassion. Before you know it, you'll believe it even if you don't at first. Now, the second thing is think the situation through to the end. If you're hesitating when it comes to holding somebody accountable, think about how that might play out. Well, if I don't hold them accountable, they might keep doing what they're doing now, and if that keeps up, they won't be productive. I'll have to eventually write them up, and if that keeps up, I'll have to fire them. That's the result of you being neglectful. But then you think through accountability. Well, I may be a little uncomfortable when I call them out, and maybe they're a little bit angry, but what if it puts them back on the right path? Maybe they learn something from it. And I play that out from there, and because they learn something from it, they're doing better, and I don't have to write them up and they're more successful. When you think it through, it's the lesser of the two. Which is the lesser of the two evils or uncomfortable situations? Well, if I'm a leader, I don't want to fire anybody, it's the second one. So when you think it through to the end, you can get yourself ready to take action, even when you're a little uncomfortable. And my last suggestion, own your discomfort. Look, it's not fun to hold people accountable. In fact, the nicer you are, I call it nice person syndrome, the more likely you're going to want to hold back. So you know what you do? Own the discomfort. Acknowledge it. Go tell on yourself. Talk to somebody about what you don't like about what you're about to have to do. By owning it, it tends to dissolve some of the feelings around it, and you're more likely to take the action you need to in holding somebody accountable. Compassion and accountability go hand in hand. And whether it's you as a parent or you as an employer, Both are acts of compassion when you keep people on the right path, doing the right things that keep them healthy, safe, and productive. It applies to children, that applies to also our employees. Don't be a neglectful leader. Engage instead in compassionate accountability, because that's your job. It's an act of compassion, and your employees deserve that from you.